Hey guys, my name is Andrew and I welcome you guys to another video on my channel. Welcome to another video in this awesome NextJs13 series. So in the previous video, I showed you guys how to add Google Fonts and use it in the NextJs13 project through the CSS approach. You use any CSS selector you wish. You can see here I demonstrated using the body selector, and over here we ended up using the class selectors. So I showed you guys in the previous video how you can use Google Fonts in NextJs13 through this CSS approach, right? So in this video, I'm going to show you guys another approach of setting up Google Fonts for a NextJs13 project, but this time using the Tailwind CSS configuration, just like the thumbnail of this video already suggests. So just in case you missed the previous video, you're going to find it in this Next.js series that I'm currently running on my channel. Yeah, on this channel, check out this Next.js series. You'll find a link to the series inside of the description of this video, so go explore the series. I mean, this series is still ongoing. It's going to help you become amazing at Next.js13, believe me guys. So this is the previous video. uh Sorry, I think this page isn't refreshed. So yeah, this is the last video. I just refreshed the page and it came over. So this is the last video that I just published some minutes ago. So check out this last video. You're going to see how we did everything from scratch. All right, so let me first show you guys what's going on inside of this font file that we have, right? We created a utils folder, and then we have the font file, and then this is everything that is happening inside of here. So basically we have this setup, and then we imported, we made some exports here, right? We made some export after the initializations, and then we imported into the layout.js file, and then we wrapped the whole of our app with the two fonts that we imported, and now wherever we call the classes, we just get what we want. Let me go explain everything in better detail. So first of all, we started by importing the Nunito Sans font, which is what we wanted, which are the two, sorry, the Nunito Sans font and the Poppins font. They were the fonts we wanted. We imported them from Google, right? And then we have this method, and then these are methods you basically call the font name you're importing, and as a method you call an object inside of the method, and then you do all of this setup. So basically we got these two coming from the next slash font slash Google package, and then we start initializing our font. The first thing is a subset, which we basically want the Latin characters of this font, and then display swap has to do with setting a fallback font just in case there's an issue with our font, and then we give the font a variable, and then the weight, we selected weight, just like it happens when using Google Fonts in the past, where you go to the website font.google.com, and then you select your weight and all you want, right? We got our subset, display variable, and then we got weight, which is 300. So we basically want this Nunito Sans. We basically wanted to have just this 300 font, right? Then we came over to set up our Poppins font. Setting up our Poppins font, same thing, subset Latin, display swap, we give the variable name, and then we selected three fonts. So this is going to be the normal call, right? So when you call Poppins, when you call the Poppins font anywhere, this will work. When you add semi-bold to it as a class, right, using the Win CSS. Now let me show you guys, I guess in the page file. Yeah, so you have font bold. When you make it semi-bold, then we now get to see the 600 font come into play. When you make it bold like it was initially, then we have the 900 fonts come into play. So guys, please check out this video. You're gonna find so much more detail inside of this video and this video as well. Enjoy the whole series. So let's go back to our build. So this is the regular once wherever we call the font, this goes for semi-bold and this for bold, right? So this is basically the setup. We got the fonts from Google, did our setup, and then we exported them. So basically we are exporting these variables, right? This variable and this variable. Those are the two exports we made here. So after exporting everything from here, we go back to our layout file, which is basically the wrapper file of our app. We got those two exports from our font file, right? These two exports, we got them from our font file, and then we now wrapped the whole of our app with the two fonts. All right, so this is what we did. Then the final thing, we went to our CSS, and then we created classes with the variables, right? We created classes with the variables. That's why I call it a selector method. So you could use the class selector, you could use a tag selector like body, div, whatever. It's just CSS, right? So variable here, and then this is where selectors come in. So you now set the variables here, and once you set the variable, wherever you call the variable names, right? Once you have wrapped the whole of your app with this font, with these fonts, wherever you now call any of those classes, you see in Tailwind CSS, sorry, in the CSS file here, it says no need to sans, poppins, right? So going back here, you have Nonito sans, poppins, and sorry, these are the JavaScript imports. Here is the font. Let me go back. This is, you see Nonito dash sans, right? The one coming from the JavaScript file is underscore because we can't use dashes in JavaScript. So this is the CSS. So we basically added the Nonito sans font to our body, and then when we come over here, we now added the poppins font to our heading. Let's go back. Let me save first of all. Let me go back to my page file. Let me save. Which other file did I make a change? Let me save so I can go back and show you guys what's up. So let me show you guys that it's going to work in our build. Let's go back to our build. All right, good. So you can see now it has updated. This is the Nunito Sans font, and this is the Poppins font, and you can see we are currently on semi bold. So the weight we have is 600. Let me go make it bold again. Yeah, let me go make it bold again. Let's go to page so that you guys can see. I take out semi, right? I save. Once I save, you guys are going to see this is going to go back to that big bold, which was 900. So basically, when you select three weights like this, like we did here, this is going to be regular, just a normal call, just semi bold, and then this is bold using Tailwind CSS now, right? So basically, this is what happens. You get the font, you do your setup, your initializations, you import into the layout file, you wrap your app with the font. If you have multiple layouts, you wrap those different layouts with the fonts, and then you call classes. This is how easy it is using the CSS approach. But now I want to show you guys how to do it with Tailwind CSS. So let's comment all of this out. Let's make sure it's not the CSS method that is working. So you're going to see now the fonts are going to lose their precedence because we've commented out the classes inside of the CSS file. So basically, I guess what we have here now should be fallback fonts. So let's go back to the build so I can show you guys. So it's the setup remains the same. You need to check out that previous video like I've been stressing. Every of the setup remains the same. The setup here remains the same. The setup inside of the way you use is actually going to be different, but then let me show you guys. The setup here remains the same, and then inside of the font file as well, the setup remains the same. All the exports remain absolutely the same. Coming to the layout file, the way you wrap your app, and the way everything remains the same. It's just the way you call your fonts that will differ. So now that we've commented all of this here and we proved in our build that the fonts are no longer working, let's go and now implement the setup inside of our Tailwind config file. So when you come to your Tailwind config file, this is coming by default from Tailwind CSS. You might not need this, so you can remove it while you're building. But then coming to the config file now, inside of this extend object, you're going to just below this. Let's leave this background whatever for now. Just below this, you then have the font family. Yeah, you have a font family. It's going to be an object. It's an object, but then the property of another object. So we say we basically give the names we want to call our fonts here, right? So we basically name our fonts inside of this config file like it is at the moment. So let's do the same thing, I guess. Let's do Nunito dash sans, right? Nunito dash sans. I think the minus sign is going to have an issue here, right? So I think so. This is a JS file. Yeah, this is a JavaScript file, so we can't use a dash here. So we now call a variable, then we have a string, then we go with var. We add the variable here basically, more like writing it the way we did inside of the CSS file, not the CSS here. It's basically Tailwind CSS, right? But then it's CSS with the scope of what we're doing. So we named it Nunito Sans. So when we want to now call it, it's going to be we need to add a font to it. It's going to now be font dash Nunito Sans. All right, then so we are done with that for Nunito Sans. Let's proceed and do this and implement that for the Poppins font. So we go with Poppins. right? And then we have the array as well. We have a string and then same variable, right? Then we basically call the name of the font. Let's go check out the variable. You can see sorry, let's go to the font file. So what variable did you give it? You see the variable here is font nonito dash sans. The variable here as well is font poppins. Don't forget this double dashes before them. So dash dash font nonito sans dash dash font poppins, exactly as you set it here. So let's go back to our config file, and then we have font dash good. Then over here as well we have dash dash font poppins. All right, good. So we have Norito Sands, we have Poppins, and then I save. So we're done. We're done, guys. We're done. So now that we've implemented this setup inside of our Tailwind CSS config file, we can now go back to wherever inside of our app. But in this case, we are going to add a font to the beginning of where of any name we're calling. So over here we have Nunito Sands, right? Sorry, we have Nonito Sans and then we have Poppins. So when we want to call it, initially, the way the CSS build works, you just call the class directly, and that's why I prefer the CSS build, the CSS method, the initial method before I started showing the Tailwind CSS method. I prefer that method because it's very straightforward. Once you've done the initial grind, you've wrapped your app, you just call the classes wherever. No need to make any import. Once your font has been imported here, go ahead and call your classes. You're good, right? But if you are using the native class name approach that comes with a new Next.js13 setup, you have to keep importing fonts wherever you want to call it, and that's not cool with me. So I prefer this method. Once I just go through it's harder to set up. It's harder to set up, but once I go through that initial grind, I do my setup. I come into my layout file. I wrap my app. I just go ahead and call classes. Not forgetting that I need to first of all go to the CSS file as well and name my classes, right? So after that, and then I go calling classes anywhere I want. So that is how the CSS pattern works. And I love it that way because it's very straightforward. But now, for us to make it work with Tailwind CSS, we already did our configuration, we already did our setup. But now we will need to keep attaching a font to wherever we want to call it. So over here, we call it Monito Sans. Now we need to make it, let's check out what we called it over there. It's different. It's different. We called it Nonito underscore sans, right? So let's go back to our layout file. Now it's going to be font. We have to add a font before it, and then Nonito, this has to be underscore, right? Because we named it Nonito underscore sans there. So it's now going to be font Nonito sans. Let me save. Good, I've saved. Let's go back to our page.js file. Here as well is now going to be font poppins. So we have to keep adding a font, and that isn't actually the best stuff for me when I can just call the css class directly without adding a font to it. I think that's shorter, that's better, that's more cool. So I prefer the CSS approach than this Tailwind CSS approach and the native class name approach that comes with a new Next.js13 import. So we have basically done everything. Let's go to our app and let's check out what's happening, and then you can see, guys, it is back as it was originally. So we have our Poppins font working, we have our Nonito Sans working, font working, everything is cool. So this is how you add Google Fonts to a Next.js13 project using the Tailwind CSS configuration method or approach. So let's go through the grind once again. You first of all get your font from the package, right? Next font slash Google. You get the fonts you want from the package, you initialize them, do your setup, and then, like I said, you can do everything here, excluding the export, directly inside of your layout file. So don't get confused about that. So we basically wanted our layout file to be cleaner, so we did everything here. Then we exported. Let me close the terminal so you guys can see better. So then we exported, and then going back to our layout.js file, we imported those exports from our utils file, and then after importing those exports, we wrapped our app with them, and then we just went calling classes in that approach, right? But in this approach, we don't just call the classes. We don't just call the setup we did here, right? We don't just call the setup. We have to keep adding fonts to them. I guess you guys have gotten this, and I believe you guys have learned a ton from this video. So please, if you learned something new, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel. There's so much more awesome content coming. Content in Web 2, content in Web 3, blockchain development, right? I'm a blockchain developer, so awesome content coming. Web 2, Web 3, mobile development, awesome content coming, guys. So please hit the like button on this video, subscribe to the channel, and then don't miss any content that I'll be releasing. I hope you've learned how to set up Google Fonts in NextJs13 using the Tailwind CSS configuration file as a setup center. Right? So guys, that's it for this video. See you guys in the next video where I'm going to explain the native NextJs13 method, the class name approach of using Google Fonts in NextJs13. So guys, bye bye. See you guys in the next video. Love you guys.